Hey, welcome back to Barley and Hops. Today we're going to cover a couple different topics. A lot of these are going to be some like tips and tricks and some explanations that'd be really, really helpful. Listen, if you give me a call, for those of you who've tried, you know that I'll normally answer the phone or I'll call you back if I possibly can. Look, if I've missed your call at any point, believe me, it's an absence of the mind and not the heart. Also, if you leave a message on YouTube or you send me an email, I'll more than likely, as a matter of fact, I almost guarantee you, I'm going to answer your question or I'm going to give it an honest shot. And if I can't answer your question, look, we don't know everything, but what we know, we'll share. That's one of the pinnacles of our business. And those three pinnacles are to be an economic brew shop, a clearinghouse of information, and we definitely want to perpetuate the hobby. So let's get right at it. I get a lot of questions about the medium for your reflux stills and what can I use, what should I use, what shouldn't I use. And believe it, folks, it's really up to you. What you want is you want something there for that vapor to start to condense on that's non-caustic so that that vapor starts to drop and re-vaporize and rise again. And again, the most volatile substance being ethanol, and it purifies each and every time it drops and rises. And you want that to drop and rise through some sort of a medium. And we've got a couple of different options. One is these really strange looking, and they call them Ration Rings. This is probably a ration saddle, and they're made out of ceramic. So there's, and you can reuse these over and over again, just clean them. We've got copper saddles, and these are real little tiny pieces of copper that have been cut out of a small piece of a hose. I've even used, listen, marbles. Marbles are an excellent medium because they're so easy to clean. They're round, they got a flat surface, and they work extremely well. I just happen to have a bag of green ones. Yours don't have to be green. But remember the small marbles we used as kids? They're an excellent source for a medium inside your reflux tower. Now we've also got the standard Rationing Rings, which are just small round circles, and they've got a hole cut through them. And what that does is just increases the surface area for your distillate to condense on. Of course, we have the copper scrubber, and this comes in a bag of 30 feet, and you just cut off, what's that, 24, 28 inches, and then you roll it up, and you can just, you roll it up, and then you can just slide it up inside your column. And this is one of those columns. This is the column for my Turbo 500. I use this pretty much a lot. Unfortunately, because I'm stuck here most of the day, so I'll put it in the back room, run it, and just let it run on its own. It's pretty idiot proof. What you do is you take this bottom, and you'll see I've got some copper mesh inside here, and a couple of Rationing Rings, but I've only got one roll of the mesh. So, and here's the tip for you. What I wanted to do, this thing produces about 180 proof from start to finish. What I wanted to do was to run my George Washington Rye through it so I didn't have to stay with it 100% of the time, but I wanted to get some flavor out of it and also didn't really need the 180 proof. So I was shooting for 160, 150 would have been fine, but I wanted the flavor retained. So I removed half of my medium. Now remember, inside here there's a copper torpedo. So I've got the benefit of the copper already. What I did was I just put a scrubbing pad in the bottom, the copper scrubber, and I got a couple of Rationing Rings in there. What that did was it dropped the proof to about 160, which was my target, and I retained about 80% of the flavor from that George Washington Rye, and I'm really, really happy with it. So it's just an idea I offer to you. The more you pack the column, of course, the more it is going to work to a point of no return. So if you overpack the column, now you're going to wind up backing up your system. And remember, if you've got an 8-gallon pot, you don't want to fill that to 8 gallons. The 8-gallon pot is its maximum. Give it some headroom because you've heard the term puking, and if you have too much, if you don't have enough headroom inside that still, it will start to bubble and it will start to puke, and you'll get a vapor lock and you'll wonder what's going on. So I'd always recommend probably 6 gallons is enough in an 8-gallon still, maybe 11 gallons in a 15, 11 to 12 or so, because give yourself enough headspace. And really what you look at is you look at that collar as that dome comes up, right there about that edge, we call that the shoulder. I wouldn't fill it up any higher than that shoulder, or just a little bit less than that if at all possible. Now look, when all else fails, and you just don't have all this stuff laying around. You know, we've got it on the shelf, and I know that's an advantage that I have here. What I've also found, and everything we talk about here, we've tried, we've tested. Interestingly enough, pennies. People say that pennies are made out of copper. Well, they are up until 1982. So if you find pennies prior to 1982, they are 95% copper, and then the last 5% is sort of like a zinc tin mix, all the way up until after like 1964 or so. Then it went to straight zinc. But so these are excellent. I looked through the drawer and you'll find them. Anything prior to 1982, anything after 1982, they're 97.5% zinc, and they're copper coated. So these are actually worth more than a penny by weight of copper. They're like 2.5 cents each. But these things, I dropped about a handful of them into a small jar with some Tarnex, swished it around. They came out nice and clean, just like this, real nice and shiny, like a brand new penny. And then I took a pair of pliers and I commenced to bending them. I just bent a couple of them. So I've got my own copper saddles right here, as you can see, and those fit nicely into this column, any column you've got. So if you're really hurting for a little bit of copper, I mean, look through your change pocket. Trust me, you're going to find some in there. And hell, if you go to the bank and you get 5 rolls or $5 worth of pennies, chances are you're going to wind up with probably 10-12% of those, which is going to be 100 pennies, are going to be copper. All right, let's get on to our next point here. The reason that we're here today is we're going to talk about grains. And we get these questions all the time. I have some 2-row, I've got some 6-row, I've got some Pilsner, I've got some 120, and this is the Lovabond is 120, which means it's a malted grain, it's just malted longer, and we'll describe that. And then we got some Flake Rye. Now, the malting process, and if you look at this, you'll see, first of all, the differences between 6-row and 2-row is really just the way the kernels are arranged on the stalk. And notice it in our picture. You'll see there's 2-row, and then you'll see 6-row, and that's just how they're arranged on the stalk. There are some other striking differences. 6-row is just a little bit smaller than the 2-row. 6-row does have a higher protein content than the 2-row, and it's got a higher diastatic power than the 2-row. Now, for a long time, 6-row was considered feed grain. As a matter of fact, in Europe, it's not as common to have 6-row in a beer as it is to have 2-row. But more and more over the past several decades, 6-row has been found to be a really good additive and a good base malt for beer. So in America, we use a lot of 6-row. Some Europeans will put on their label that, you know, they're wholly made with 2-row, but they're two equivalent products. There are some differences to them though, and that is 6-row has a little bit higher protein, so it's a little bit of a crisper. If you're making beer, it's a little bit crisper beer. It's a little bit clearer of a beer, as opposed to the 2-row, which is a little bit more malty, a little bit more character to it. One of the major differences though for brewers is the diastatic power, which refers to diastase. And diastase are those enzymes we've been talking about forever on these videos, glucoamylase and alpha amylase. Well, really it's alpha and beta, and the beta amylase is replaced with gluco that you can purchase. But those two enzymes are what convert the starches into fermentable sugars. So, what we have here is we have 2-row is about 140 in diastatic power. 6-row is routinely 160 to 180 in diastatic power. Now, what does all that mean? That means that the requirement for a grain to convert itself, its own starches, and look at our picture. You'll see the germination process where your amylase starts to convert those starches into fermentable sugars, which makes them available for us to draw. But there's a lot of those enzymes that remain. And of those enzymes that remain, you use those to convert other products, which we're going to get to. These are our flaked products and our flaked corn. So 2-row is 140, takes about 30 to 35 to convert itself. All that remaining enzyme is there in order to convert your starches into fermentable sugars. That's why you'll normally see that a recipe for a good spirit will normally have 1 to 2 pounds of a grain, a base grain. And it's not for the flavor, it's for the amylase enzyme that's resident inside the grain. And it's the same thing with the 6-row. But 6-row has a little bit more of it. You don't really need that much because whatever's left over is just gone. It's just wasted. Now, the Pilsner malt is another malt, and it's like 110. So you got those three. But remember, the malting process is left to the professional. You can do it at home, but it's a long, laborious process. There are professions out there, guys called maltsters, and they do this. What they do is they gather the grain, they soak them, they allow them to start to sprout. Once they get ready to sprout, they start sprouting, they spread them out. Then they try to reduce the humidity, control the humidity. They try to control the temperature until they get it to the right place. And then, of course, they go through and they make sure they've got the right count across that. And then they stop it. They stop the germination process, which means that each one of those kernels has started to convert the starches into fermentable sugars, which are available for brewers. And there's also all those enzymes that are left over that are created by that outer shell that goes around the inside of that grain. So that's what I tell you about. So those are those three. So remember, you can use 2-row, you can use 6-row, you can use Pilsner. Now, what a maltster will do, though, in order to get some more flavors, what they'll do is they'll allow those grains to convert to sugar, and then they'll malt them, as in cook. They're in a kiln, and they're heated up, and the degree in which they heat makes a difference on the color and the caramelization of those sugars. This one happens to be 120. So it's a Lovibond of 120. Lovibond is just a scale of color, and it starts at 10, and it goes all the way up to 800. And so anything above about a 10 is where the amylase is rendered neutral. So keep that in mind. Remember that. If you're going to use a grain as an adjunct to convert starches into fermentable sugars, if you get anything above about a 10 Lovibond, which means that the maltster has malted the grain, knocked off all the sprouts, and then they put it in a kiln and they've caramelized the sugars, they've ruined the amylase. If they haven't done that, as in this case, all they've done is let it go through its germination process, stopped the germination, knocked off the sprouts, dried them, and now they're prepared and they're ready with sugars and amylase. That's one group. The next group is where they start to specialize in the grain. And these grains will come as dark as this is 120, all, like I said, all the way up to 800, which is almost a black grain. So just remember, 10 and above, stay away from them if you're trying to use them, unless you're using them for flavor or something specific. So then we come up with the flake products. Now this is a Flake Rye, and you'll notice that a Flake Rye looks just like oatmeal. Some of the oatmeals that you can get off your grocery shelf, and some of those they'll work extremely well too. But these are pre-gelatinized, which means that they've been steamed and rolled so they're flat. They have no diastatic power. They do not have any conversion factor whatsoever, but they are full of wonderful flavors and starches. And it's the same thing with your flake corn. Flake corn was done the same way, steam rolled and processed. But the amazing thing about this is that the amount of starch that's available is so easily converted to sugars, and it retains the flavor, and you use that. You use 2-row, 6-row, Pilsner malt. Do not use 10 Lovibond or higher. Look, all we can do is share information here. And if you want to order something from us, please give us a call. You can also check out brewhouse.com, brewhaus.com. Anything on that website's available through us. The only difference is, and if you order through Brewhouse, I'm fine with that. If you order through us, you get me with it. Have a great day. We wish you the best in your brewing pleasures. Happy distilling.